Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you to the spring quarterly meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. The meeting is now officially called to order. Ms. Osborne, would you call the roll, please?
Chairman Cope.
Here.
Dr. Dishner. Here. Secretary Hargett.
Here.
Ms. Kadir.
Here.
Ms. Coben.
Here.
Treasurer Lillard.
Here.
Ms. Roach.
Here.
Mr. Watson.
Here.
Mayor Wharton.
Here.
Comptroller Wilson. Mr. Stafford.
Here.
Mr. Chisenhall.
Here.
Chair, we have 12 present. We have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you. The next order of business is to adopt the agenda, and at this time I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mayor Wharton. Is there a second? Second by Treasurer Lillard. All in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. The next item of business is approval of the minutes, and I'll entertain a motion for that. A motion by Treasurer Lillard, second by Comptroller Wilson. All in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Well, some of you know and can observe we've have an opportunity to welcome two new commissioners to our commission meeting today. Since our last meeting, Bill Lee has stepped down from the commission, but we are happy to welcome Frank Watson and Vernon Stafford, both of whom are from Memphis, for their very first commission meeting here this afternoon. We appreciate you both being here very much and your willingness to serve. I'll tell you a little bit about both of them. First, Frank. Frank was appointed by Speaker Harwell as the representative of West Tennessee. He's senior counsel at Baker Donaldson Law Firm now in Memphis and has had a long career as a litigator in the Memphis area. He served on a number of boards, not least of which as a founding board member for Federal Express, which is a company I think you've probably heard of before. So, Frank, thank you very much for being here. And then Vernon Stafford, Jr. Was appointed jointly by Lieutenant Governor and Speaker Harwell to also represent West Tennessee. Mr. Stafford is Executive Vice President and Chief Audit Executive for First Horizon National Corporation. Previously, he worked for the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency for the United States Treasury. We welcome you here to this commission meeting. Thank you for your service. Also want to touch briefly, as most of you also know, that the first round of board meetings for the locally governed institutions have now concluded. And I think I can say, and Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, that they all went really well. And I think everyone has a good feeling that we're off to a great start with this new format. There are a couple of themes that have developed so far from these meetings. The first theme is the emphasis that everyone is placing on the fact that every institution in higher education in the state needs and must work through this commission in order for us to continue to all row in the same direction and to be unified. And remember that we do serve a state. We have that purpose. We have different roles, but we all serve the state of Tennessee. And that's, frankly, the most vital role that we play, is being the unifying factor of higher education now. And so that was a point that was emphasized during those meetings. As you also know, THEC will continue to play a central role for capital projects, legislative coordination, academic programs, among other things. Another commonly expressed concern was with regard to transfer pathways. As you can imagine, there is concern now with students transferring among the different locally governed institutions. THEC obviously is fully committed to make the transition smooth and to assist every institution with the transfer pathways to make it smooth and successful. And I'm confident and remain confident in our ability here at this commission to make higher education run smoothly in the state and for the best interest of our students and our taxpayers. With that, I call on Mr. Krause.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the commission members' attendance today. I do want to briefly cover a few things first on the administrative side for the commission. To welcome our new members, to thank Mr. Lee, though he is not here for his service, and also to say we'll have more new commission members coming. Keith Wilson's vacancy is pending being filled by the governor, and Bill Lee's vacancy, we believe, will shortly be filled as well. And so we look forward to having the commission up at full speed.
Can I interrupt you one
Please.
second? I forgot to announce we're on something really important. Siri Kadir will be your last meeting, is that right? She will become a medical doctor in 2 weeks and is scheduled to begin her residency in Indianapolis at IU. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And has actually offered,
Soon to be doctor. I want to see my voice, but maybe that's good.
What's your specialty going to be?
Internal medicine.
Good for you.
She's actually offered after the meeting to do free patient screenings. So thank you.
So we can start with you, Jim.
I wish you had said that before the
second help of banana.
Brownies are in the foyer. So again, we're going to have some commission appointments coming shortly. We look forward to them. Want to also just recognize just a great colleague over the years that this will be their last meeting with us. So when I talk to my colleagues in other states, one of the things they envy in Tennessee is our relationship between the coordinating board and the systems. And you do not often find the THEC in each state having such a great relationship with their flagship system, their regent system, or their community college system. A lot of that is because the communication that happens actually not at the Dr. DiPietro and me level. It's actually normally about staffers in each academic affairs division talking and each fiscal affairs division talking. And so with that, would be remiss to not recognize Katie High for her 30 years of service. In advance of this announcement, when we told her we wanted to recognize her, she said she wanted only one thing, and that was to get her official THEC nameplate. First, I want to tell you to raise your aspirations about retirement gifts, and second, we will present this to you after the meeting, Katie. So thank you very much for your service. I want to update the commission. First, I also want to recognize our presidents in the room. I know for a fact I saw Dr. White from Austin P, Dr. Rudd from the University of Memphis, Dr. Nolan from ETSU, Dr. Oldham from Tennessee Tech, and Chancellor Estep from WGU Tennessee. Did I miss any of our campus presidents? We appreciate your attendance greatly. We know how busy you are. Let me use the bulk of my report to do a few different things. One, to update the commission on the significant activities that have happened since our last meeting. And I'll start off with legislative session. I would not venture this to be a full legislative update because that would take most of the meeting, but let me highlight three really important things. Yesterday, the Tennessee Reconnect Act passed. The Tennessean headline this morning struck me. It said Tennessee becomes first state in the nation to offer universally free community college. That's a big deal. And we're very grateful to Leader Norris for his sponsorship in the Senate and Representative Powers in the House. And we will get to work and have an update for the commission in July. Back here, Jordan, we're going to embarrass you in a moment. We'll have an update to the commission in July on Reconnect implementation. Second, the higher education budget, and certainly would love to hear Dr. DiPietro's thoughts on this as well. I view it as a momentous higher education budget, $337 million in capital, which is a record, not just a fully funded outcomes-based funding formula, but actually over and above. And I think that it gives us, if we're trying to reach an ambitious goal like Drive to 55, in my mind, Dr. DiPietro felt like the right level of investment.
It's been an incredible year. Of the 12 years I've worked in the state of Tennessee and 12 sessions, it's the best budget I've seen.
So again, we look forward to providing throughout the summer. We continue to work on implementing the budget. We think we'll probably be able to provide a further update in July. But I will tell you that all the indications, the budget document that was passed fulfilled really our wildest dreams for higher education investment. Let me also talk really quickly about something that happened at the end of session that I'm excited about. We know in Tennessee, one, we have a robust HBCU community ranging from Lemoyne-Owen and Memphis, Lane College, Fisk University, Tennessee State University, and Meharry Medical College. We will become the first SHIO agency in America to have a full-time staffer whose only mission in life is thinking through HBCU success. And I think that is just the right investment by the state. We are grateful to the General Assembly for funding that position. And Betty Dandridge Johnson in our shop, where are you, Betty? Betty is already getting to work on a job description. If you know someone you think would be great in that position, we want to talk to them. They're going to get to turn over some new ground and make sure that we have an HBCU Excellence Consortium here in this state. Tennessee Promise feels right to revisit this with the commission since so many of you have been involved since the first step. Many of us had an opportunity last weekend to see our first Tennessee Promise students graduate. Don't have an exact number. I'll tell you it's in the low thousands, though, of our initial cohort are now college graduates between the TCATs and the community colleges. It was a special moment to see those students who we were talking about a program conceptually a few years ago now be college graduates. The numbers we have are very encouraging. The year one to year two retention was at 63%. We suspect we'll know a full graduation rate. It will likely be December because we're giving these students 5 semesters to complete. but we're seeing all of the early data indicators we would want to see en route to a fully mature program. I'd also say we remain number one in the nation for FAFSA at 72% of our seniors completing the FAFSA. The nearest state in the nation is 18 points back. For some more perspective on that, 5 years ago, our FAFSA completion rate among seniors was 62%. So we've increased FAFSA completion 10% in 5 years. I give a lot of that credit to Troy Grant and his team and our THEC outreach staff, as well as K-12 leaders who have taken the FAFSA seriously at the high school level. Finally, I want to applaud the good work of our team. As you all know, we're really trying hard at THEC. You see our vision displayed on the wall behind you now about being relentlessly focused on increasing the number of Tennesseans with a college degree. Much to our dismay, no one graduates from THEC. That actually only happens at college campuses. And so our staff work really hard at being on campus to learn from the people that are actually serving students, to interface directly with students. This gives you a snapshot of all the places we've been. Stephanie Bellard Chase and her division have been to 22 campuses in the last 90 days. It's something we remain active at, and many of you on the commission have now had a chance to go to campus with us, and we're going to continue that throughout the summer, that our commission members get a chance to be on campus. We did a visit to Tennessee State University that Pam and Frank were able to be a part of. My favorite part about that actually was meeting students, because as you all know, they're our customers. And one of the students there, Jordan Gaither, is with us. Jordan, please stand. Jordan is Mr. TSU. He did not wear the sash today. And Jordan spoke profoundly about the impacts that the policies voted on at this table, how they affect him and the students he represents at TSU. Jordan doesn't know it yet, but we think he should work in higher education. And so he's going to be interning here this summer. As you also see, our fashion game has been stepped up dramatically by Jordan's presence. And we look forward to having you here, Jordan. Thank you. Let me offer two substantive policy updates to the Commission. First, 3.5 years ago, we launched the Drive to 55, which is hard to believe. One of the things I saw Chancellor Tidings do really well at her first board meeting was report to her board how TBR was doing on the goal. And so it feels appropriate for us to report to you on how the state is doing. So this represents two things. Your red line is the projected number of degrees we need to generate to reach Drive to 55. The blue line is what is actually happening. And as you can see, we are on track. I want to give credit really solely to the campuses, Chancellor Tidings, Dr. DiPietro. This represents combined degree production also of, where's Dr. Claude Presnell? This also represents our private universities, and our for-profit institutions as well. Thank you, David. So I just want to show this to you as we talk over and over about the Drive to 55, that this is not abstract and that we are very fortunate to be able to report we're on track towards a very ambitious goal. Finally, the Focus Act, and Chairman Cope alluded to this briefly a moment ago. I want to use the remainder of my report, if it pleases the Chairman, for Dr. Lauren Collier to come present an overview of what we've learned the last 3 months as we've implemented the Focus Act here at THEC.
Ask one
Certainly.
question, Mike. Do you have any idea the numbers of students who are coming out of the Promise Initiative as graduates who are headed to baccalaureate institutions?
We don't yet, and that's simply because we're trying to give them 5 semesters. Can I give you an anecdotal thing?
Sure.
Most of the community colleges I'm hearing from, and Chancellor Tidings jump in, it's about half and half, maybe 60-40 AASs versus transfers. But the balance is present. What seems to be that we're splitting an even number of transfers to baccalaureates versus granting an AAS. Does that feel right, Chancellor?
Outright.
So has that mix changed?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, that's significantly higher.
All right, good.
Yeah. And our TCAT, obviously, I saw Carol Puryear here a moment ago, but we know for a fact our TCAT age demographic dropped significantly. And we have younger students at TCATs as a result of Promise. And we also think we've got the right transfer pathways. I don't think it's inconceivable that we're going to be able to construct the pathway for a student to start off at a TCAT and end at a university, if not UT. Obviously, there's work that needs to be done on that, but Promise has set the table for that discussion.
Well, don't tell Chancellor Carver that, because he'll be shamelessly going to every community college in the state in the next week.
And TCATs, yeah.
TCATs.
And tweeting about it. Any other questions on the data before we move on? Dr. Collier, if you could walk us through where we are with Focus right now.
Sure. Good afternoon, Chairman Cope, Commissioners, Director Krause. Since we met in January, a few things have happened with the Focus transition. First and foremost, the governor's appointees were all confirmed by the General Assembly. The governance change was submitted and approved by the regional accreditor, SAC-COC. The boards were trained by THEC with support from the Association of Governing Boards, and all 6 have officially met for their first meeting. The presidents and some of the staff were acknowledged in the room, and I couldn't understate how much back-end work went into each and every one of these points. The president's transition teams and really the faculty and staff throughout the entire institution. So congratulations to them for standing up their boards. THEC's direct role in this process was in training the new boards. To accomplish this, we traveled 1,161 miles in 28 days. We said the word focus 438 times. That's an unofficial count, but it's probably low. A few highlights of that training. First and foremost, Dr. Carol Cartwright, who is the representative from the Association of Governing Boards, talked about best practices for institutional governance and really outlined the differences between the board role as fiduciary responsibility and oversight and the daily operations as the purview of the presidents and his or her faculty and staff. Embedded within that is a concept of shared governance, where faculty have the unique expertise to really be primarily responsible for academic matters. That's a newer concept for many folks that come from outside academia. Perhaps the most confounding to the new board members were the concepts of open meetings and open records law. Many of them come from the private sector and were frankly bewildered or frustrated. But we did outline those parameters and let them know that the systems and the commission have managed to operate within that system for many years and done so effectively. For THEC's part, we outlined what we think of as the lanes of responsibility in this new structure. By and large, THEC operates at the statewide level, which we have listed as the statewide master plan and are responsible for tracking progress toward that goal. So most of our efforts are as a resource and a convener operating between and amongst institutions. But there are a few places where we intentionally are more directly involved, albeit at a high level, and those are with data, finance, academic affairs, and policy. Certainly, the way that we undertake those duties shifts a bit in the landscape of focus. And that became very apparent during the trainings. As you know, the caliber of board members are exceptional. And they very quickly, as we talked about the funding formula and about academic programs, begin to clue into the strategic questions in front of them and ask things like, where can we move the needle on the funding formula? Do we have the latitude to completely change the mission, or are we bound by the historical context? Those are big questions, and they have shaped the way that THEC has had to revision policies and also our practices. You'll see that play out today. Some of it began in January with some of the academic policies. But academic programs do require THEC approval, and we look at that through the lens first of statewide efficiency, and then through institutional mission. And for board members especially, this concept of mission is a little bit different as well. We're talking more than the institution's commitment to research and teaching and service. But the Complete College Act asks them to detail distinctiveness in terms of academic programs as aligned with workforce and economic development and research, and also distinctiveness in student profiles. So are students more residential, undergraduate, or part-time? Are you reaching particular target populations? You will see this afternoon, you will see those mission statements have been, and this applies to all the systems and the LGIs, those mission statements begin their affirmation process that will be annual. In terms of financial policy, you will also see that there are some changes. The first is the effort that has come out of the Capital Policies Working Group that changes the way THEC prioritizes proposals moving forward. Part of that includes a revision to the capital match requirements that has been kicked around of late, but certainly was a question that emerged at some of the trainings as well. You will also know, as we've said many times, that what has previously been tuition recommendations become binding. You will be asked to examine and approve that as well. Beyond the policy changes, we also recognize that THEC's role shifts to being a broader consulting role and helping as boards and institutions dive into their data and what those implications are for programmatic change and as they envision new opportunities. So we want to make ourselves available to those who are interested in that as well. Next steps in the transition. As you know, the Focus Act is very explicit about calling for an intentional transition process that allows all the state players to assess capacity and to adapt. You will begin to see the requests for severance from the LGIs. They have the option to independently manage capital projects, procurement, and data. And those proposals will come before you as the commission, and there will be more details about how and what processes and how that assessment takes place. As you heard, the LGIs are moving into their second round of board meetings. Those will start next week and run through mid-June in anticipation of the Tennessee Board of Regents meeting later in June. As you might imagine, those agendas are very finance heavy. And so we will be watching those just like all of you will. And finally, we anticipate in August the Tennessee Higher Education Summit that presidents, chancellors, board members will be getting additional details about. This is essentially professional development part 2 for our new board members and for those.
And a historic opportunity, too. So it would be the first time ever that the University of Tennessee Board, the Board of Regents, and certainly these 6 new boards and this commission will have ever been convened together. And we think that's the right time to have big picture conversations. I think it's the right time for board relationships, intra-board relationships to be formed that are very appropriate. So certainly we've communicated. I think both of your board secretaries know because we've seen those dates and appreciate. We'll be running past you sooner rather than later an agenda, Dr. DiPietro and Chancellor, so that you all get a sense and are able to have some input.
I'm happy to entertain questions.
As you would imagine, we spend a fair amount of what is THEC time helping board members understand. I will just please let the commission know we have emphasized a collaborative role versus a regulatory role. The governing board of those institutions is their governing board, and we do not seek that role. We're a coordinator, and I think they went well. I'm seeing general nods from the presidents in the audience who were present. Thank you.
Director Krause, as part of this getting together this coming August, will it also include recommendations from, say, a consultant from AGB about the appropriate level of guidance from the standpoint of a board member versus the institution's ability to control and do what it needs to do?
Absolutely. No, and
do you have a speaker lined up to do that?
we don't have the specific speaker yet. We have, I think, a slot held for that.
Okay.
It was a big part of our discussion with the focus boards, though, was AGB helping trustees to understand trusteeship versus running a campus and being a president. But certainly. Any other questions on Focus Act? Let me just say as my final point, Mr. Chairman, I'm grateful for Dr. Morrison being here. We continue to try to find ways at THEC to be a link between K-12 and higher ed. Most notably, we gathered right here in this room 2 days ago with one of our universities and their College of Education. And Dr. Morrison and her team, who run the teacher report card for the state, we did really intensive consulting with that college on how their College of Education can do better. And so I'm grateful for her presence here and look forward to the joint meeting with her board in July.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks very much for your comments. Any questions for Mike? Next, we will receive the system reports. We'll start with the Board of Regents. Dr. Tidings.
Thank you. I appreciate being here today. Director Krause, Chairman Coe, members of the commission. I am going on 4 months now. I visited with you in January before I took office in February, so I have enjoyed every minute of it, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to report to you on what we've been doing. First, you've heard the focus update already, but I do want to add that from our vantage point, we do feel like the transitions have been going very smoothly. We've been staying very closely connected with our university partners and working for what we all consider that critical enterprise of educating our students. Internally, we are implementing our plans for a more unified system of community and technical colleges, focusing on the strength of those individual colleges. I have 2 items to report to you on that regard. The first is that I have asked the Board of Regents to consider changing the title of our TCAT directors to that of TCAT presidents to exemplify the fact that they are equal partners in the process of educating our students. Secondly, we have launched a realignment of the TBR system office. The board's personnel committee approved the reorganization at our committee meetings, and the full board will receive that in June. Under the reorganization, we are combining all academic affairs work into one department, no longer separated into community and technical college. This will streamline the approving of programs and will also allow us to focus on accreditation functions. Most of you are aware that Dr. Tristan Denley has left. Actually, yesterday was his last day with TBR. He is moving to the University System of Georgia. They are laughing that they took one, they're taking one back. So we have swapped. I came from Georgia, so now they're taking Tristan back.
We still think we got the better end of the deal.
Thank you. Thank you. We will miss him. He has been an integral part of our system, but I am very pleased to announce to you that Dr. Randy Schulte has agreed to serve as interim Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. Dr. Schulte is with us here today. Randy, if you'd wave at the group and let them know who you are. We will be conducting a national search for this position, but Randy has agreed to keep the work moving forward until we're able to do that. We are also establishing a new division of student success, which will focus on all of our student initiatives. The system is currently working on many of these initiatives, and we want to make sure that we are giving strategic emphasis to that and that we are always looking for ways to improve what's happening with our student expectations. I have asked Executive Vice Chancellor James King to serve as interim in this position until we can again do a search to be conducted for that. We are also creating a new Office of Economic and Community Development to work very closely with state agencies to more quickly and efficiently provide for the workforce training needs of business and industry. Dr. Carol Perrier will serve as Vice Chancellor of Economic and Community Development. Carol is with us today. Carol, if you'll say hello. Carol has been at TBR since 1994, including 5 years as director of TCAT Murfreesboro. She has also worked in business and industry and brings to the table a great deal of experience in helping our industry and economic partners come together. We are working very closely with the Department of Economic Development and will be creating a joint training program whereby all of our individuals working in economic development will have trained with those in the Department of Economic Development. So when a company comes to look at Tennessee, we will immediately put together a task force made up of those trained individuals that will go to them being able to offer exactly what we provide in workforce and economic development opportunities. Another new department for the office is our Vice Chancellor of External Affairs. Dr. Kim McCormick will be serving in this position. Many of you met Kim at one of the last meetings. She has worked at Chattanooga State Community College administration for 8 years and for 17 years in the Hamilton County School District. And as many of you may or may not be aware, she was actually the author of the sales program for the state of Tennessee. In the 2016 State of the Address, Governor Haslam spoke about the community and technical college system as the main vehicle on the Drive to 55 initiative. We believe our realignment will help us to achieve that goal, and as you saw, we are well ahead of our numbers to reach that goal. Tomorrow, we have a phone vote with our board to appoint a new president at Chattanooga State. After a 3.5 months search, led by Regent Tom Griscom, We are recommending to the board to appoint Dr. Rebecca Ashford for this position. Dr. Ashford has been president of the Student Affairs at Pellissippi State in Knoxville since 2008. We believe she will make an excellent appointment to this position, and as y'all know, it was difficult for me to find somebody that I was giving my family to, so it was a very, very big job. She's also worked very closely with the UT system, building the Bridge program, and we're hopeful that she will bring that same program to Chattanooga, working with UTC. Anticipating this week's final approval of the Governor's Tennessee Reconnect expansion, I have asked our leadership team to come up with 4 to 6 major strategies to help accommodate our adult students that we expect will be returning to college within the next 18 months. We know that many, if not most, of these students will have families, will have work obligations, and will have difficulties unlike our Tennessee Promise students. We need to make sure that we are prepared with more flexible class scheduling, office hours, and looking at evenings and Saturdays to be ready for the students that will come. Our shared services initiative that we began 6 months ago has now kicked into high gear. We are in an effort to make our system more efficient by consolidating various back office functions and including aspects of human resources, our payroll, and our finance divisions. We are expecting this to save money for the state and to improve our services for the state as a whole. Our board's Business and Finance Operations Committee has been working on budgets and maintenance fees for next year, subject to your action today on the mandatory ranges. We do expect to be in what we consider will probably be the middle of the range that you will put forward. I'm also pleased to report that the legislators' approval of the state budget this week included $3.95 million allocation to begin the implementation of some of the safety and security measures that we had developed from a task force. This will also include money for the 6 universities because we put that request forward and it was voted on to include all. A dramatically improved Tennessee Transfer Pathway website will go live July 1st. This is something that I'm really excited to be rolled out. It's a highly improved website. It will be comprehensive in nature, very nimble and accessible to multiple user groups, primarily including students, advisors, high school counselors, parents, teachers, and business and industry. It will also be a mobile-friendly device, so students can actually use their iPhone to access this device. And again, I want to thank Dr. Schulte and the team that's been working on this. It's extremely impressive. So we'll send you an update so that you know to look at it July 1st. And finally, one word about the momentum year that we've had. We launched this in the fall, and we called it our Momentum Year, pulling together and concentrating work on our campuses on 5 student behaviors that research has shown significantly contribute to student persistence and success. Behaviors such as choosing an appropriate major in an academic focus area and helping students create productive academic mindsets. The Momentum Year was the theme of the TBR Completion Academy that was held in November, which was the first ever advising academy and brought together college advisors from across the state, including the UT system, to learn more about high-impact practices, student behaviors, and to help students succeed. That is my report. I thank you for this opportunity to share it with you.
Thank you, Dr. Tidings. Any questions for Dr. Tidings? Dr. DiPietro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope my voice will hold up. I'm approaching 7 years now, so that's kind of where I'm at. And we've been doing our part with the locally governed institutions from the standpoint of many of them have made contact with us about how is it to deal with a board, what is the good, the bad, and the ugly of a board. And the reality is we really value our board and its input, although you have moments with board members, of course, but let me reflect on 2 I've had in the last 60 days or so. So at our board meeting in Chattanooga, I had a kidney stone. I passed a kidney stone, Mr. Comptroller, in the middle of a board meeting and soldiered through.
Dr. Kadir is here.
Yeah, Dr. Kadir is here. And then just a couple of weeks ago now, we had board committee meetings, and I ended up having a root canal out of that deal, a toothache. So Deb actually said to me a couple days after that last set of committee meetings, Joe, maybe this job isn't good for your health. But the reality is, we're doing really, really well. One of the things I'd like to tell you about is we will be undertaking an approach to a campaign for the University of Tennessee, not a fundraising campaign, but a campaign to really get our message out about all we accomplish as the University of Tennessee. Many of you have heard my story about going around to editorial boards last summer, in which they typically want to talk about the controversial things, but really don't want to talk about the core mission: educate, discover, connect. And at each one of those events with editorial boards at 3 of the major papers, I would tell them about the 24 goals we put in place that are metrics, that are hard, fast numbers. My first year on this job, and how we had achieved 3/4 of them, we exceeded goal. And the others were in the high 80s or 90s, and we thought we could fix those. And 2 times I heard, that's nice, Joe. And the last time I heard, Joe, you grew up in Illinois, you've been to O'Hare Airport, you know that lots of planes come and go there. We only cover near misses and crashes. And so that made me really reflect on, if we want to get our message out about how we educate and discover and connect, how we drive our numbers as our part with the master plan for the Drive to 55, how we're graduating people more quickly, how our discovery programs are doing even better than they ever have before, with not only larger amounts of dollars, but solutions to people's real problems, like the diagnosis of diabetic retinopathy at distance. We had to start to sell it ourselves. And so we will embark not only in planning on doing that, but finding out what people currently think when they hear about the University of Tennessee. So if you get a robocall on your phone, please pick it up, because I hope it's one of those people asking you what you think. And then we will try to message out all the great things we accomplish across our system. I too would like to thank Katie High for her service to the institution. She has been incredibly valuable to me over the time frame. She's been with me since day one, but she says it's time, and we respect that. And we have a search underway to replace her, hopefully by the time she departs. The other thing that's happening right now that we think is powerful and good, a few years ago, for those commission members who are new, we started to look at our budget and how we do our business differently. Well, the tradition during my first 5 years here, when I was chancellor for the Institute of Agriculture, was often to run into Nashville. Often thought they should, in agriculture, I thought they should have me on a big white horse with a pair of chaps on and a pair of 6-shooters, and they wouldn't let me in the plaza with them, and a 10-gallon hat, and I would march in and say, all we really need is more money, and we can do more work, and we can do better things. And I'm not terribly impressed with my track record on tuition increases the first 3 years I had this job, which ranged from 6 to, say, 12% was the high. So a couple of 3 years ago, I sort of woke up and smelled the coffee and decided that we had to figure out, after talking to an economist, Bill Fox, who knows more about the state budget than most people, a lot of people, he really said, even in the best of times, Joe, you really can't expect huge influxes of money and appropriations for your part of the organization, because there's so many needs across the state. If the state really had the money, they would be happy to give it to you, but the reality is, even in the best of times, you're still going to have to figure out how to improve your programs, how to drive further excellence into those, and how to achieve even more, doing on your own back. And while we appreciate a wonderful budget this year, the reality is we need to do more at looking at cost savings and efficiencies. And I created a group called the Budget Advisor Group a couple of years ago, and we did what we're now calling BAG 1.0. And this was both people inside the institution as well as external to it. I had a couple of business people on that were businessmen that were terribly helpful to us. And we actually took a look at, how do we control costs or reduce costs, or how do we drive revenue into our organization to do new initiatives and bigger and greater things. We took a look at a model that basically ran something like this. If tuition increases stayed at the cost of inflation, and if other costs or revenues grew by 3%, and the state appropriation just stayed even, and we've benefited from better than that, where would we land in 10 years? And we would be $377 million underwater in a single year, $2.4 billion underwater for the total run of the curve over that 10-year time frame. And then better yet, over the first 2 years of what we're calling the BAG initiative, we allocated those to our chief executive officers of the campuses and institute and said, how are you going to close that gap? And then we set up controls or boundaries around how far they could turn the knobs, because these CEOs, our chancellors in our system of our campuses, have to have some latitude about how they're going to solve that problem. The first 2 years worth of that $377 million was $68 million. We'll come in well over that, probably over $100 million when we get to the end of June next month. And so we're on track. And in tandem with that, we've now reconvened BAG a few months ago, and we will do BAG 2.0. And we've been meeting every 10 days to 2 weeks, and we've put together another boundaries document or controls document, as well as we've looked at the model around this, and it probably needs some adjustment because of the state's generosity from the standpoint of appropriations we've received. We're going to take that into account. But I'm happy to report to you that we've been able to keep tuition increases under 3% the last 2 years, and we'll certainly be there this year. Now, if you look at our history, you have to go back to when Grease was in the movie theater in the 70s to find 2 consecutive years of tuition increases at the University of Tennessee system under 3%. So we've done something special by doing 2. We will be under 2 this year when we go to our board in June. We will be taking back to our board at the June meeting the new version of this budget initiative for their approval and their feedback, and looking forward to that. In tandem with all that, we're always concerned about retaining the very best people because that's where your real quality is driven, is off the back of people. We're a people-intensive organization with 75% of our budget or thereabouts in payroll. And the reality is we need to re-up our look at our what we call our salary gap analysis. Our peer we'll use both peer institutions as well as aspirational institutions as part of that. We'll pick 6 of each. We're really driven, our board is too, in the fact that we need to establish peers we use for everything. We've had a tendency to have some slippage in this area, frankly, where you pick a certain set of peers to study one thing and a different set of peers to study something else. And the reality is we need to be uniform about that and look at what are the appropriate characteristics of a peer, and then work with our campuses in a manner that puts together peers that are both aspirational as well as those that are current peers, and then utilize those repeatedly. If a little bit of things that are happening around the system. Knoxville, obviously, we have a new chancellor, Beverly Davenport. She's been in place, I think, all of about 85 days now. And one of the things that she has on our radar screen is she indeed wants to grow enrollment at the undergraduate level at Knoxville. And she has a plan. She's starting a planning process to do that. And she also is very interested in growing the PhD program there too. Our graduate program at Knoxville hasn't grown the way it should if we want it to do everything it should. At Chattanooga, we've just gained approval of our board there for them to do a state plus tuition model for the border counties along North Georgia and the first county into Alabama on the northeast side. So those students coming from those counties will pay 125% of in-state tuition and can attend UTC. We think, this is a brain gain, not a drain. A brain gain, not a brain drain. Because, if you look at national standards, somewhere between 55 and 60% of students stay in the state where they are educated. And, of course, if you look at Chattanooga being a border campus, there are a lot of people in North Georgia that work in Tennessee. At Martin, Keith Carver's doing a great job, obviously, new chancellor there. Some of you have seen his social media. He'll do anything for UT Martin, including riding a camel and a bull. But I think the thing you need to know is enrollment. It looks like applications have gotten very strong. They're up about 20% or 25% over last year. Some of that's Keith's efforts. We also have to thank Dr. Smith, who was the interim chancellor, who did a really good job of getting enrollment management in line with Martin. At Memphis, at the Health Science Center there, they've just gained approval from our board for pharmacy students at Memphis who are those people who are out of state within a 250-mile radius of Memphis will have the ability to go to pharmacy school at Memphis at the Health Science Center at in-state rates within 250 miles. They want to build that class to a little larger size. It made sense to our board. It made sense to me, and we're really happy about that. The Institute of Public Service, I do these field trips. I ended up, of all places, in a snuff factory in Memphis, U.S. snuff. We were 15 minutes into a meeting there, and I actually said to the group from the snuff company, "Do you all smell wintergreen?" And they said no. I think they were lying. But at any rate, I'm only telling you the story because the Institute of Public Service is an unusual aspect of the University of Tennessee from the standpoint of what most universities who are land grants have, in that they deal not only with county and city government, but they deal with companies, commercial companies that are creating jobs and creating wealth in Tennessee, like the Snuff Company in Memphis. And they provide their services at relatively discounted costs in an effort to be able to provide things like lean management to this company. They were very, very appreciative of where they had come with the efforts of our professionals and the Technical Advisory Service, which advises industry about what they had done for the company. And you know, one of the things we do that's different than any other higher education enterprise in the state is we have outreach. 5 million outreach and contacts a year. The Institute of Public Service is part of that. Of course, the Institute of Ag that I love because I had that job, do that as well with the 95 county extension offices, the 10 research education centers, and the 4-H centers. So we continue to do a lot. We got a lot more work to do, and we'll keep right after it. Thank you very much.
Questions, Pam?
Joe, would you mind telling us who you would identify as your inspirational peers?
Aspirational?
Or aspirational, yes.
Yeah, inspirational. Yeah,
Well, too,
another
yes.
way to put it.
It
Yeah.
could be inspirational.
Well, you know, I think the thing that we've realized is you have to be careful about how you do that, and you have to think about the characteristics first. And so each of these campuses has to be looked at on its own merits. So, for example, for Knoxville, you have to think about the fact that as a major land grant, it's one of the few, I think, in the nation that doesn't have a medical school. So it's hard to find the right match. And I guess you could back numbers out of other ones that are aspirational. You know, I think aspirational goals need to be if you're looking at Knoxville, probably those institutions that are AAUs, members of the American Association of Universities. So those would, on the aspirational side, those would be the kind of places you'd like to look at. You have to take into account this medical school issue. So many of those include places like the University of Wisconsin, you know, Ohio State, University of Florida, Vanderbilt's in that club. I mean, there are a number of them. And then you have to look, you know, I think an easy way to look at criteria is to look at the Carnegie classification of these institutions as a beginning point, and then you have to fine tune it from there.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions? Mike?
Mr. Chairman, I would just say this will probably be our last THEC meeting where we do not ask for the locally governed institutions to provide an update. In fact, I would go ahead of the 4 presidents that are here now and the 3 that I'm certain are watching at home. We would ask you, please be prepared in July by some manner of which you determine yourselves to have a presidential representative speak, because we certainly want to hear from the 6 locally governed institutions.
Great. Thanks very much. We now move on to the portion of our agenda that require action on behalf of the Commission. Item 1A on your agenda, I'll call on Dr. Stephanie Beller Chase for post-secondary education authorization.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, Director Krause, members of the Commission. Good afternoon. I have 3 action items for your consideration today. The first one is for reauthorization. In the past, we have reauthorized institutions on an annual basis. Due to the Higher Education Authorization Act of 2016, we will now be reauthorizing institutions on a quarterly basis based on their initial authorization date. So in order to get in a system, this time there's 2 separate reauthorization dates for these institutions so that we could catch up. And after this, there'll be just one group of institutions, and then every quarter we will reauthorize, and it will be done on an annual basis. Okay, so for the first action item, it is in Section 1A, and the Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions has recommended that the first group, 44 regular authorization, 1 for temporary authorization, and 2 for conditional authorization, be reauthorized for the period of July 1st, 2017 through February 28th, 2018. The second group includes recommendations for 32 institutions for regular authorization, 11 for temporary, and 4 for conditional. And for that group, the date range would be July 1st, 2017 through May 31st, 2018. And just a quick note, temporary authorization just simply means you've been authorized less than 2 years. After 2 years, you become regular. As far as conditional, for the 6 institutions that are on conditional authorization, 5 of them are because their financial ratios don't meet our 1-to-1, so they have to do extra reporting and submit quarterly financial statements. And one of those institutions is not meeting the minimum standards. They are currently trying to get authorization in their home state. They've been put on notice. If they do not, then they will lose their authorization in Tennessee. That's the first action item.
Thanks, Dr. Bellard Chase. Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. I have a motion to approve the recommendation. Do we have a second?
Second.
Very good. And so, Carol Ann, motion by Mr. Stafford, second by Dr. Dishner. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. The second action item can be found in sections 1B and 1C. The committee has recommended that the 6 new institutions and the 48 new programs be granted temporary authorization and approval respectively.
Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Comptroller Wilson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Treasurer Lillard. All in favor, is there any discussion? I should ask first. If not, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and lastly, if you reference section 1D, there are 6 institutions listed there for optional expedited authorization. To get optional expedited authorization, another acronym, we call it OEA, you have to be recognized by an accreditor that is recognized by the U.S. DOE. You have to be eligible for Title IV, and you have to offer at least 1 degree.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll entertain another motion.
So moved.
Motion from Comptroller Wilson, second. Second from Mr. Stafford. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Bellard Chase. Next, we're on item 2 of our agenda. I'll call on Dr. Pamela Knox.
Good afternoon. We have 4 action items today, 4 programs. We're changing the approach a little bit from how it's been done previously. You've got your notebooks describing the programs. Today we'll start by asking representatives from institutions and from the system board to present the program and then open it up for questions for you prior to you taking a vote. On behalf of Austin Peay State University, Dr. Jaime Taylor, the Dean of the College of Science and Mathematics, will be presenting the Engineering Physics Bachelor of Science program.
I'd like to present to you the proposal for establishing a new undergraduate major, the Bachelor of Science in Engineering, or BSE, in Engineering Physics. APSU is seeking your approval for this proposed program. The program has already received internal approvals at Austin Peay, including approval from the APSU Board of Trustees. The program has also received reviewed by THEC staff and qualified external reviewer. The university proposes to implement this new bachelor's degree program in fall of 2017. The program will be housed in the Department of Physics and Astronomy within the College of Science and Mathematics. We estimate an enrollment of 15 students in fall of 2017, 28 students in fall of 2018, and 45 students in the fall of 2019. It is important to note that no other public institution within the state of Tennessee currently offers a degree of any kind in engineering physics. After launching the program, APSU will seek program accreditation through the American Board of Engineering and Technology, or ABET. Engineering physics is an interdisciplinary study of physics, mathematics, and engineering. This field emphasizes the development of advanced techniques to solve complex real-world problems in engineering design and manufacturing where established mechanical or electrical engineering approaches are inadequate. The program focuses on advanced topics that are outside the scopes of a traditional engineering subject area and requires more physics and design curriculum than a typical engineering degree. APSU is confident of the role that this proposed program can serve in meeting local and regional workforce needs. Engineering physicists typically work in high-tech industry and manufacturing settings in teams with engineers and engineering technologists. This program will aid Clarksville, Montgomery County, and state of Tennessee employers seeking employees with engineering education, and will provide engineering graduates to maintain the rapid growth of the Clarksville metropolitan statistical area. I'd also like to point out that Austin Peay is located in one of the fastest growing MSAs in the U.S., and that the advanced manufacturing sector is growing very rapidly in our area. Tennessee at this point, from what we've heard from our industry locally, is not producing enough engineers, and we feel this is needed to continue to attract those industries to Tennessee.
Right, thank you. Absolutely. No, yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
I don't mean to rush you. In your proposal, you speak of the employment opportunities that will be available to your graduates. Do you have some examples of some of the companies in the Clarksville, Fort Campbell area that would be interested?
Yes, there's two types of industries we're looking at. One of them is just typically the local utility industry. They have contacted us, and actually everybody we've contacted has offered internships for these students. But some of those are just having a real difficult time attracting a professional engineer into the Clarksville community. On the other side, you have Train, Hancock, and some of those other big manufacturing facilities. And particularly Hancock has really struggled to fill those first 100 engineering positions that they needed to fill. As a matter of fact, they had to go outside of the state of Tennessee to look for those.
Any other questions? Dr. White, did you have anything? Thanks, Dr. White.
You know, I have one other question. Mm-hmm. You said that you were you looked at this because Murray State had a similar program, and that's where you had to base your enrollment projections, was what Murray State had in their program and then what you had in your other physics classes. That's correct?
Correct.
Okay. But this would be the only program of its kind in Tennessee.
That is correct. This will be the only one of its kind in Tennessee.
Oh.
Faculty will we?
We actually have two professional engineers in the physics department at this time. That both happen to be Tennessee THEC graduates. But one of them spent 32 years in industry before coming to Austin Peay, and the other one worked for 12 years with the Saturn Corporation. And so those two individuals will take the lead on the program. No additional faculty members.
In year 3, are you not looking for a full-time position in year 3?
Yeah, sorry. Year 3, once the enrollment goes up, then we'll be looking to add a faculty member. Yeah.
Other questions? Thanks very much. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Approval.
Motion by
Second.
Treasurer Railroad, second by Ms. Coben. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks very much.
The second program that you're going to be presented is from Middle Tennessee State University. Dr. Mark Burns, who is interim provost, will be doing the presentation, and this is the Africana Studies Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science program.
Thank you, Dr. Knox, and thank you all for entertaining this proposal today. What is Africana Studies? Just as a reminder, it's an interdisciplinary approach to the study of Africa, Africans, and also people of African descent all around the world, the so-called African diaspora. The main question I anticipate is, why in the world would you want such a major, and what will those graduates do? And believe me, that's a question we ask ourselves now before any proposal goes forward. And there's a couple of answers. One is the increasing importance of Africa in the world, particularly the world economy, and you'll see on the screen some stats that demonstrate that there are business opportunities in Africa, and we need people familiar with that continent to address those. And there's also a broader answer that really applies to any liberal arts program, and this is very much a classical liberal arts program, which is that employers tell us they want the sort of skills that liberal arts programs help engender in students. critical thinking, reading, and writing, the ability to communicate. Those things are in short supply out there in the marketplace, and all of our programs, although the content differs from major to major, are designed to hone those skills among our students. So it's a natural and a very fair question to ask about any liberal arts degree, but we feel quite confident. In fact, we know, not only for MTSU liberal arts, but around the country, that those employers are in great demand. In fact, THEC staff have asked me to write a white paper on the role of liberal arts in the workforce. And, how can I say no when the THEC staff asked me that? But I'm actually looking forward to that, because it's an argument that needs to be hashed out. So we'll be delivering that sometime in the future. Student learning outcomes, well, I've already hit the main thing. In addition to the content knowledge about the continent of Africa and its people, and those people who are living around the world, it's those basic liberal arts skills, and also just the ability to interweave the knowledge that they get in the classroom with their day-to-day life. I mean, employers tell us they want people who can communicate with diverse constituencies and can understand their backgrounds. We're very careful in designing this program. I heard discussion earlier about pathways. We want to make it as easy as possible for students coming from a community college to take this major. And so all of these pathways translate seamlessly into our major at MTSU. And we had a pretty successful external review, I think. Dr. Chambers from Michigan State University had some glowing remarks about our proposal. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Burns, questions of Dr. Burns?
Noted in the program duplication, I know that you looked at the fact that University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and Memphis have similar programs.
Right.
So I'm curious about the size of those programs, how many graduates they have, and could you give us some idea of where they're working?
I don't know the size of those programs. Looking at my friends from UT, if they know that off the top of their head. The question about where are they working, we struggle with that. Liberal arts folks are working all over the place.
Yeah, I think Betty Dandridge Johnson, you may have a comment on that.
Just wanted to say that it's really a concentration broader program.
Right.
And that average anywhere from 5 to 7 graduates each year.
How many again? I'm sorry.
5 to 7.
5 to 7.
But it's an interdisciplinary program with an emphasis in this discipline.
And is that different, do you think, Dr. DiPietro, than this recommendation? I mean, is a concentration different than a major?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Burns, what's the enrollment of the associate's degree, the minor in this?
It varies from semester to semester. We've actually got two minors that are relevant: African Studies and African American Studies, and about 50 minors.
Watson?
Is this degree a degree that the graduate can take into the public workplace, in your opinion, and actually get a job, or is it a gateway to something else?
It's a great question. I mean, I don't think you're going to see many job ads that say required degree with a major in Africana Studies. So in that sense, it's a gateway. I mean, and that's true for most liberal arts fields, is that we're preparing people for a career in which they change jobs 3, 4, 5 times, rather than giving, a specific ticket into a profession.
I think I just kind of want to add, as a liberal arts student, while I was in college, there were a lot of people taking a bunch of different majors, like African American Studies or literature or anything. And I think it didn't really hurt them in the future in terms of job prospects. I think now with the liberal arts major, like, companies aren't necessarily looking, as far as I know, for specific skill sets, but people, again, that can think critically and that they can teach to do whatever kind of job they want.
So you talked about the value this has, or the importance of studying the continent of Africa, but how does this then project where we go from here with regard to other continents or other ethnicities in terms of studies?
I don't anticipate that there'd be a study program for each continent. I mean, so much of what we study already comes from Europe, for example. I don't see, although in political science we do have European studies, but
Think about South America, for example.
okay, it's certainly possible. I mean, area studies is a fairly common thing, within disciplines, or Latin American studies is a classic example. So there are a lot of possibilities. But at MTSU, I don't necessarily see, at least in the near future, a lot of additional majors based on areas.
Aren't you already in programs with?
We do. We have a lot of agreements, MOUs with Chinese universities. There's not a tremendous amount of curriculum attached to the study of China yet, but we have a fair number of Chinese students who come here, and we send some students there, and faculty exchanges as well.
Comptroller Wilson.
Years ago, when I was going to, I went to studies. I'm going to call. But we had. What are you doing?
It's a great question.
We missed it. Mr. Comptroller, you weren't talking in the mic. We missed the question. If you could repeat just.
Well, if you didn't hear me, you're probably fortunate. My concern is that I want this really to be an academic program and not a whatever happens to be the social issues of the day.
Right. Well, so faculty develop this program. Faculty who are in different disciplines underwent a pretty rigorous review both at the campus level and at TBR. And TBR have a role in this one? And they did have a role. And then now at THEC. So we definitely do not want this to become just a soapbox for people expressing political views. Now, that's not the intent at all. It's an academic program, and we've laid out a whole series of curricular options that these students will take.
This has happened. This has happened at other schools, and so.
Yes, sir.
I think in the future, as these are presented to the Comptroller's question there, I mean, just an awareness of what's going on the African continent in the overall global scheme. China's building not necessarily a military outpost, and anybody who's not fully aware of what's going on that continent in terms of the economy, the shift in military alliances and all. So I concur in that. So as these are presented in the future, it would give us much better appreciation of it if we projected how this fits, not merely in terms of a course of study, but how does it fit in with world developments today? And that doesn't come through that clearly. It's just, it gives the impression too often that it's kind of a novelty. This is something that somebody
That's
wants.
what I'm worried about. I mean, right. Timbuktu was the most powerful country in the world for 200 years.
Mr. Coben.
Dr. Burns, are there any other programs like this in this area?
Not in Middle Tennessee, no, ma'am.
Have there ever been before?
There have been African American studies majors. I think there was one at TSU, but to my knowledge, there's not been an Africana studies. We're getting much broader than an African American studies.
That's the point. Because TSU has had a program for ages, but again, projecting not merely to study the continent in and of itself, but what is the role of that continent in global affairs today. If you're not aware of what's going on the continent of Africa, particularly as other nations become involved in the various wars and everything, how it impacts us. Refugee policy is one of the most divisive issues in the world today. If you're not familiar with what's going on this continent, you're not going to be well equipped to go into any significant job market in many particular fields.
Well, and I think to the extent people have mentioned concerns, we will get an update on this, obviously, I think in January to see what the level of demand is and whether that's fulfilled or not. And
Right, and of course, there's the post-approval monitoring process that keeps close tabs on that, right?
sounds like a fascinating topic, so
I think so.
Other questions at all? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, is there a second? It's a second.
Second.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Dr. Burns.
Third program for asking for your consideration, Dr. Katie High, Vice President of Academic Affairs and Student Success with the UT system, will be presenting on behalf of the faculty and administration the Supply Chain Management Master of Science.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Krause, members of the Commission. UT Knoxville is requesting approval to offer a Master of Science degree in Supply Chain Management. UTK already offers a bachelor's degree in supply chain. That program is ranked third in the country. It has 600 students enrolled in that program. And building on that reputation, the Haslam College of Business has partnered with two leading international institutions, Kuhn Logistics University in Hamburg, Germany, and Tongji University in Shanghai, China. The program is a consortial arrangement among those three institutions. The students will have a cohort from each of those institutions. So there will be between 10 and 20 from China, 10 and 20 from Germany, and between 10 to 20 from the U.S. They will take courses at all of those institutions, but they will receive their degree from their home institutions. So the American students will get their degree from UT Knoxville. And so what is supply chain? When the consultants came in, and both Dr. Knox and Betty Dandridge were there for the site visit, they showed us this graphic, and I thought this was probably one of the best ways to explain supply chain management. It's a long chain of actions, transformations, movements, and the storage required to move a product, and in this case it's grain, from the farm to the processing facility, where it becomes Fruit Loops, and onto the packaging plant, and then onto the distributor, in this case Costco, and finally into little Billy's bowl, and we hope into his mouth. So in a nutshell, that's what they're learning to do efficiently and effectively and in the most financially conservative way possible. Academically, it's a little more complicated than that, but what they are doing is they are preparing graduates to understand and navigate all of the complex relationships among the supply network and the demand network. It covers procurements, logistics, financials, operations, and the integrated planning to make it all work. This particular program will ensure that the graduates have a mastery at an in-depth level of the supply chain, and the unique feature is that it's also going to provide them with in-depth knowledge of international business. Each school will have a cohort. It's a 39 credit hour program. It's a lifelong program. They will all start out in China for one semester. Then they will go to Germany for a semester. Then they will all come to Knoxville for a semester, and they will all go back home. And while they are back home, the groups will have a team project, a capstone project, where they have to apply all of the supply chain theory that they have learned. They will apply it to a real-world problem with a real business in their home country. Students who graduate with this master's degree typically earn about $81,000 right out of the shoot. That's compared to an average salary for new graduates with a bachelor's degree of $54,000. So it's a $25,000 differential on average their first year out of graduate school. They will come in. These are not people who've been out in the field for a while. These are students who are either recent bachelor's graduates or have 2 or 3 years of business experience, and they're going to have a leg up on the folks who have the bachelor's degree because they're going to have not only more knowledge, but they're going to have that international experience. People like FedEx, Kraft, General Mills have expressed interest, and when we did a needs assessment, we found out that when we surveyed executives in these fields, that 46% of them said that it is more difficult to find experts in supply chain management now than it was 2 years ago. The field is expanding, the industry is expanding, and we have not been able to keep up with the need. This is the only program like this in the state. As far as we know, it's the only one like this in the country that has the international components. It has been approved by the campus. It was approved by our board in March, and we are seeking approval today from the Tennessee Higher Education Commission.
Thank you, Dr. Hyde. Questions? Commissioner Coben?
Dr. High, first I want to compliment the Haslam School of Business. It's a wonderful program. At least it appears to be just a fantastic thing to do for these master's degree students. I wanted to ask you, what are the employment figures for the bachelor's in supply chain management from UT Knoxville?
That's a great question. I don't have the answer right off the top of my head, but I do know that
Tremendous.
Yeah, they're very, very high. These students come out. Knoxville, I think, has 9 undergraduate majors in business, and all of the graduates come out, and they're very highly sought after and have no difficulty at all either getting a job or getting into graduate school.
I assume that's one of the criteria in your third in the nation ranking is
Yes.
employability of your graduates. But thank you.
And the strength of the supply chain program, Commissioner Colvin, at Knoxville is incredible. I mean, there are story after story I can tell you from meeting either with students or people who are alumni and have had this training who say, the reason I came here, I was a non-resident, was because when I went to University X, Y, or Z, I enrolled in supply chain management, and all the books were written by the guys from Knoxville. So, you know, it's one of the very finest programs we have.
Mr. Roach?
I have a personal perspective on this. My oldest son graduated in logistics and would have pursued this master's degree, but he wasn't available. So he went on to pursue an MBA. But from a needs assessment, the kids who come out in the bachelor's are doing well. And I think the employment is above 90% right out of school. But this really transforms their education. And from an employer perspective, I'm hiring these people.
Yes.
So FedEx hires these people. It is a fantastic program. I think Dean Mangum's staff putting the international component in it was brilliant because it exposes the students to the interactions with the international community while they're still in the academic arena. So it's a fantastic program.
Well, if they're working for U.S. companies abroad, they're going to have a leg up. If they're working in Tennessee and they have to do business with international companies, they're going to have a leg up. So,
First of all, I echo the comments about the kudos to the program and the world-class criteria that you've established here. With regard to retention, do you see any concerns in being able to retain students in Tennessee, given the world-class education they'll receive and the needs that we have here in the state? What concerns might there be in retention?
we will track that, but as Dr. DiPietro said earlier, about 50 to 60% of the students who go to school in Tennessee stay in the state. Now, I don't know if they stay there for the rest of their lives, but they stay here for 5 to 10 years afterwards. So we will track that. I will have to say that, unfortunately, they're probably going to be courted by people all over the world.
That's
Unfortunately, Amazon's in Seattle.
Yes.
Other questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
A motion for approval. Is there a second? Second. I have a second. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Just use the mouse. When I pull this up, when I pull up your.
Final program that we're going to ask that you consider today is the Data Science and Engineering PhD program being put forth by the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. Dr. India Lane, Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs and Student Success at the UT System Office, will be presenting.
Thank you, Dr. Knox, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be here today to fill in, step in for Dr. Lee Riedinger, who is the director of this program. And I'm going to start with this photograph, which relates both to how this new program is coming to be and why Lee is not here today. This is former Governor Phil Bredesen, who saw the facilities and campuses of the Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, sitting in East Tennessee 20 minutes apart, and said, we need to leverage this potential. We need to leverage these incredible resources. And he and the UT leaders at the time were given a challenge to do something big. What is the big thing that we can do, bringing the resources of ORNL and UTK together? Well, that big thing kind of turned into what's now known as the Bredesen Center. The Bredesen Center is a very unique center for interdisciplinary research and graduate education. Their mission and their strategy is to go out and find and engage the best and the brightest faculty members and researchers from these two units. Also, go out and find the best and the brightest graduate students from across the country and across the world and match them up together and put them to work on complex energy science programs. This is the Energy Science and Engineering PhD program, which this commission approved about 6 years ago. And you fast forward to today, this program is knocking it out of the park. They quickly met their enrollment goals and have a number of highly qualified and exciting faculty members participating, including governor's chairs. Their students are winning awards and fellowships kind of all over the place. And they have now graduated, as of tonight, 24 PhD graduates, which is an amazing number in a fairly short period of time. And this represents the largest PhD program we have at UT. This photograph of the last graduation reminds me also why Lee is not here today. Lee is back in Knoxville getting ready for the graduate hooding ceremony tonight. Those ceremonies are always really special. This one in particular is special because there's an honorary degree being given to Governor Phil Bredesen. This brings us to the new program. The Bredesen Center is now proposing a second PhD program modeled after that very successful energy science and engineering program. This one's focused on data science. What is data science? Well, you're probably more familiar with the term big data. And big data relates to the massive amounts of data that are now generated and collected in so many ways on a minute-to-minute basis in our society. From every click that you make on your computer, from everything coming out of your cell phone, your GPS, our satellites, our health records, all kinds of things. And the data scientist has to be able to look at and manage all the data on this side, including the signals and the images and all the types of things that contribute to that data, then has to be able to apply advanced mathematical and computing techniques to that huge database in order to create innovative analyses of the data, and then has to be able to use sophisticated modeling methods to pull out from that data what we can learn from it and how it can be applied to other areas or to complex problems. What can we learn from this? This slide may help you understand the relationship between data science and research, especially engineering research. These photographs all illustrate the various fields that utilize massive amounts of data. So again, the data scientist uses statistical tools, scientific disciplinary information, and sophisticated modeling to work on problems in all these areas. For example, how do you figure out from a community like Knoxville how to maximize our use of solar power? Well, you look at gazillions of sensors throughout 24-hour periods of time. How do you figure out how to manage traffic lights in Knoxville? I wish they would do this near my street. So these are real-time continuous data producing areas that are put into these sophisticated models by data scientists. In these other areas, I am not qualified or smart enough to think about what it takes to tackle huge amounts of electronic health records, climate data, national intelligence data. These are areas where, and even in advanced manufacturing models, these are areas where simply the amount of data generated is too large for any individual to figure out how to handle. This program then is designed to meet those challenges and train a new type of scientist, a data scientist that has a core curriculum in the mathematical and modeling skills, of course has a heavy time spent in a research lab in a very specific area related to one of those fields on the slide before, and also goes through a sequence of courses related to either data science policy or data science entrepreneurship. Those courses train them and help them become employable and enhance their skills for work in either academia, public policy, or industry, or more commonly now, startup companies and startup situations. The program is modeled after the highly successful energy science and engineering program. They recruit all over the country. They plan for a total of enrollment of about 120 students at a time, with at least 15 graduates a year by the time the program matures. By increasing the number of graduate students, doctoral degrees, and increasing research capacity, this program absolutely supports the UT strategic plans and the Tennessee master plan. I don't think it takes much imagination to recognize that the employment opportunities for individuals that are trained at this level for these types of things is huge and is growing rapidly. What does this program cost? Well, in order to attract these graduate students, we need to be able to support their training with a stipend and tuition and fees. Like the initial program proposed by Lee and supported by Governor Bredesen, this program relies on a one-time investment that is spent out over the first 5 years of the program. How this works is that investment is used to support the stipends and tuition and fees for students in that first semester, or maybe into their second or third semester, until they join a research lab. When they are matched with the right research lab and the right researchers group, that group has grants and contracts through which they pay for a graduate student and support that graduate student from then until they complete the program. After year 6 or so, the tuition recovery that has been accumulating over time, as well as overhead F&A recovery that's been accumulating over time into an ORNL research incentive fund, is what can sustain the program and keep supporting new students the next year and the next year and the next year. I'll conclude with this slide of the the current cohort of graduate students at the Bredesen Center. If Lee were here, he could tell you the story behind each and every one of those students, and he would also tell you all about the fascinating work that they're working on in their research work. I'm not able to do that today, but I am happy to try to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner?
First of all, I think it's a great idea, so don't take these questions as not indicating any lack of support. Is it accurate that the University of Tennessee at Knoxville offers a BS in computer science, artificial intelligence?
There certainly is a BS in computer science, and I don't know for sure about the artificial intelligence. There probably is one. There are several bachelor's programs in computer science.
I noticed that you didn't use the word or the phrase artificial intelligence once, but I'd say that, from my view, that's exactly what you're talking about. Is there some reason for that?
The terms that are I'll let Joe speak to this.
Well, no, I think a couple of things. This is a veterinarian speaking, so I simplify this stuff down. But if you look at the biological sciences piece of this on that slide India has. So here's how I have heard Dr. Riedinger tell me this much more elegantly than I'm going to tell you. But the reality is right now we know the human genome. We know everybody's DNA. And Commissioner Watson, you and I go to the doctor, and the doctor gives you and I the same antibiotic. Yours works, mine doesn't. Someday, because the data sets are so complex and complicated, with the power of the supercomputers we have at Oak Ridge and people who can mine data, they're going to be able to, in Lee's estimation, predict why it works for me before the doctor gives it to you and doesn't work for you. So the physician would know, please give Frank a different antibiotic than you give Joe. So that's sort of a real-world application of the kinds of things, big data-wise, that are just huge masses of data that need to be manipulated to get those kinds of answers.
I understand. I'm just curious about why it doesn't fit in with your artificial intelligence program.
Well, I think a couple of things. This program is unique because it ties to research labs at Oak Ridge National Lab for the PhD program. Deb and I happen to have a nephew in this program. He's in the Energy Sciences and Engineering program, formerly a petroleum engineer for Halliburton. He was a fracking engineer in Hobbs, New Mexico. He was very interested in the PhD program, so he's very interested in energy sciences. And so his research program with his mentor looks at bacteria and how they generate energy. And in fact, he went to the KUB sewage treatment plant to get his initial inoculum. Can you believe that?
We'll welcome anyone who wants to come.
And now he has microcells that he can generate energy out of. So it ties faculty at both places to the program differently than what you might be able to get in a traditional master's or PhD degree on the university campus at Knoxville, mandated as part of the policy.
Yes, Lee could speak to this much more specifically, but this slide has on the right side all of the different types of what you probably would lump into as types of artificial intelligence, all the different modeling types. Machine learning would be the closest. And the difference here is being able to, one, it's the level of sophistication and the level of computing that we're talking about. Oak Ridge has the either number one or number two, depending on which year it is, at this point, fastest, strongest, hugest supercomputer, and that's what it's required to do these type of computations, which would be quite different from what a bachelor student would be working with.
And I think the other aspect of this is the faculty at Knoxville are very much engaged in this, but the program stretching to the lab with new facilities, new institutes, whichever one you want to pick, Institute for Computational Sciences, the Bioenergy Institute, new buildings, new facilities, fast computers, makes it very attractive to the very best students in the nation. I mean, we get students coming to this program who are amazingly qualified from places like Berkeley, places like MIT, because they want to work at this national lab, the best lab, I would argue, in the nation.
Dr. Wharton.
I recall when this was in the design phases years back, right after Governor Bredesen. And the question I had was, can this capacity be used at, say, a St. Jude Children's Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee? Sure. That's so many times we look at this and we say, this is one of those East Tennessee things. But with the connectivity that we now have across the state and the sequencing in the human genome that they're doing down at St. Jude, this is just as readily available.
Absolutely. Actually,
there.
one of the things
That's
that I
the key
didn't
thing.
mention was that we are bringing in UT Chattanooga and UT Health Science Center to this program as it begins and as it grows. In fact, there's a governor's chair at the Health Science Center that's very highly engaged in this particular proposal.
It makes no sense to try to replicate this across the state.
No,
And with the
no, those folks
connectivity
will be
that we
brought in.
have,
So
that's the key thing.
Are there any PhD programs like this in the country?
To my knowledge, from my earliest conversations with Dr. Riedinger, the University of Michigan was looking at a program, and MIT was looking at a program. I do not know where those are at this point.
There are similar programs at labs and a PhD with relationship like this with Lawrence Livermore in Berkeley, but not in this discipline. I don't know of this discipline, the big data science piece.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
To break the suspense, I'll move approval.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? There's a second. All right, Secretary Hargett. Any further discussion? All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks very much. All right, let's take a quick 5 to 10 minute bathroom break or whatever you want to do, and we'll be back in 10 minutes. Eat brownies.
Get a brownie.
Yeah. What happened?
Chairman, Director Krause, members of the Commission, I want to direct your attention to, and it's item 3 in your notebooks. And a point of order, Mr. Chairman, we have policy updates, and I will indulge you as to how you'd rather us take these up and vote individually or as a group. I can, of course, go through the materials as a group and then defer to you on how you'd like to take the vote.
Unless somebody has an objection, let's take it as a group and vote on it at once.
One vote.
Yep.
Well, as background, the FOCUS Act has caused THEC to rethink a lot of its policies and procedures. And so what I'm about to go through with you is an overview of 9 of those in the fiscal area. These are generally in one of 2 categories. There is the routine procedural policy that we're updating, also those that have been either dictated in or just necessitated by the FOCUS Act. And so what's coming is 10 minutes of mundaneness punctuated by 5 minutes of untamed excitement, I promise you. So one of 2 categories. And what you have, too, in the notebooks and on the screen is with each policy, I'll go through the last time the Commission touched the policy. In some cases, it's 30 years or so ago. A bit of the mechanics of what is changing, and then a summary of the components that are changing. You'll notice on each slide, and just to show you the first one as an example, that the blue section at the bottom will give you a sense of whether the changes being presented are very clerical and minimal, or whether they are very substantive, and also from where they come. Are they statutorily required, reflecting the FOCUS Act, or more just procedural and make sure what we're doing is in alignment with current practice? So, for the first one, there is a policy on financial and statistical reporting. We are simply cleaning up some language here to align our practices with what we currently do. Align our policies with what we do currently in practice. This involves around reporting data from the Commission staff to the Legislative Budget Office, Finance and Administration, appropriate deadlines, etc. These are minimal changes, and again, it's more reflecting procedures currently in practice by the staff. The second one is one of the more substantive ones, and this is the tuition and fee section. And this is one we will return to later in the agenda for action. This policy change, of course, is significant. It is reflecting the FOCUS Act as well, which gives this body binding tuition authority now to set ranges on undergraduate resident tuition and then the sum total tuition and mandatory fees. The policy outline simply reflects that statutory language and directs the staff how to then bring those recommendations to you. It's aligning the policy with the statute. And please stop me as we go through these if you have questions. Operating appropriations, again, this is another one that has not been touched in about 30 years. This concerns the overall budget recommendation process, the way we go about collecting data, the mechanics of us developing the recommendation to you. This is not getting into the details of the formula at all, more about how we go about the budget recommendation and its component parts. This one, again, is fairly minimal, aligning the policy with what staff currently do in practice.
Now one we will linger on for a while. The capital outlay or capital project policy is one that we have spent a fair amount of time thinking about for the last 6 months. And let me begin to jingle your memory about what we discussed in January, where we talked about some of the principles already being discussed that came and merged out of a working group that we've been convening monthly since December to think through how the Commission is to rethink its capital priorities. The fundamental dynamic here, of course, is we previously had UT and TBR submitting requests to us. We now have those 2 buckets of projects as well as 6 new buckets of projects coming to us every year. That alone is reason enough to rethink how we do capital and how we present to you our recommendations, to say nothing of the fact that there is a misalignment between what capital project policy is now and where the state's goals are now, the same dynamic that existed in the funding formula policy several years ago. So in part, this is an effort to refresh how we bring priorities to you and to align those with state policy and practice and the Drive to 55 goals. Several things here, and also in a moment I'm going to ask Mr. Art Litsky, who's been helping us think through these projects, to come and reflect on this process with us. So I ask Art to start warming up. But capital outlay first. This policy concerns outlay, maintenance, and disclosure, but first capital outlay. Primarily, the last 6 months, that working group has identified 5 pillars of policy that really will then drive how we bring projects forward to you. Again, we are developing rubrics, developing criteria that we can evaluate projects with. 5 major areas, though. The first one is how well the project fits with state goals. This is perhaps the most significant element of all these policies. How well the capital project fits in with Drive to 55. That can be done several ways. Drive to 55 is not just about increased degree production. It is about the enhancement of existing credentials. It's about research, public service, workforce development, and connections with regional and local workforce needs. There are many ways a project can connect to Drive to 55 and state goals. That is a fundamental element of the new capital outlay prioritization process. That gets a heavy weight in the rubrics that we're developing to evaluate those projects. Secondly, is how well that project connects with a campus's goals and the campus master plan, the campus mission. We would hope projects are consonant with that. We hope that they would have been envisioned in a prior master plan before they are designed and brought to the Commission. So part of the process is not just what it connects with state policy, but how well a project connects with campus goals, campus mission, and what its objectives are and what its master plan says that it should include. Sorry, I realize I'm on the wrong slide. Thirdly is space planning guidelines. THEC has long had a series of guidelines that try to evaluate space needs, both what is existing space breakdowns across classroom, laboratories, etc., versus what a campus of a similar size and complexity and enrollment should need with that data, and comparing those two. So for instance, it would tell a campus whether it is severely deficient in its amount of classroom or lab space. It would identify where needs are. Part of the rubric will contain an evaluation of how the project fits with where we identify needs on that campus, as well as the condition of those facilities and an assessment of how well the facility is currently operating and whether it has ADA, life safety issues, etc. Fourth is a programmatic or business plan. What we mean by this is we want the campus or the board to have thought through, for instance, what academic programs might go into the building. If the construction of the building involves raising a dilapidated facility and migrating programs and people over time, has the board and campus thought through that sequence? Have they thought through the mechanics of the process such where we can feel confident that the project that they've done their homework on the project, not just with the design and the architecture, but the programmatic elements of the plan and their long-term business approach to operating that facility? This is less a way for the staff to substitute our judgment for the campuses or the boards, but more just sort of a recognition that they have, again, thought through those aspects of it sufficiently where we have confidence that the project can go forward. Finally, the external funding component. This is what was previously really the capital match program. And for background here, for I guess 6 years or so now, every capital outlay project this commission has approved has had a minimum required match of external funding that was graduated by sector, different types, but it was basically a pay or play. You had to bring that minimum match forward or we would not prioritize your project. Over the years, we've heard, and both systems have made these observations, our constitutional officers have made these observations, as have we. There are aspects of that that just did not work and did not always reflect the realities of fundraising capacity on campuses, and there was just some general inequities in the way we operationalized the capital match program for many years. Therefore, what we're bringing to you today as part of the outlay rubric and as part of the policy is sort of to reconceptualize the match and thinking of it instead as acknowledgement and scoring of whatever external funding a campus can bring to a project. That has two components, one of which is there are still minimums. We're still asking each campus to bring some minimum level of external funding. They are way lower than the current minimums are. As they exceed that minimum, points begin to be earned in the rubric to reflect that level of external funding. Two things. There is a cap, effectively, beyond which you no longer accrue points. You cannot, for lack of a better way of saying it, buy your way onto the priority list. Secondly, it's a very predictable scoring rubric. It's a predictable way where campus will know if they bring so many dollars beyond the minimum, excuse me, that will translate into so many points on the rubric. So it'll be a very predictable way for the boards and campuses to know what level of funding produces what outcome in the scoring rubric. This has been a very tough process to work through on this component particularly because the capital match is a sensitive issue. We feel confident that this works and kind of gets a better approach than what we have. We've discussed this with finance administration, with the administration itself, with other parties, and feel confident that this is an approach that can work as an element there.
If I could just say for a moment, Mr. Chairman, and Dr. Deaton, in a characteristically modest way, kind of undersold the collaborative way we got here. I just want to emphasize that. It was in this room, cross-sector, cross-campus team that did this. This was not THEC staff cooking up a solution. It was us trying to do it collaboratively in a way that there's no doubt this is new ground, and we needed that input from people. But I think we have landed at a place, and I assume Art will be coming up in a moment. We've got the best minds in the nation thinking about how do you establish a state agenda for what is a massive investment. You know, this year the state's going to spend $337 million on higher ed capital. And so making sure we did that right, Dr. Deaton and his team, Crystal, Stephen, and Taylor, did a really good job, I think, and I hope the campuses and the systems feel like that too, because we really tried to establish a dialogue that has led us here.
It's a good segue. Let me ask Mr. Litsky to come to the podium. And there has been a group, again, for about 6 months, and it's an eclectic group. Mike mentioned we've had provosts, fiscal officers, facilities managers and directors, boards and campus staff helping us think through this, along with Mr. R. Litsky, who's the president of Dober Litsky Matthey out of Boston. You know, Art has been in Tennessee a long time with his work. Some of you are familiar with him. Many of you are very familiar with him. This morning, for instance, he was on the MTSU campus walking the Science Building, the College of Education Building, maybe a few more. All buildings that were initially conceived and designed as part of their master plan back, Patty, in 2006 or 7 or 8 or so. So Art was able to sort of see it from drawing to building today. He's been in Tennessee a long time and has worked with many of our campuses. Earlier, and Dennis Jones may still be here, he is the president of the National Center for Higher Education Management Systems, who helps us on broad finance issues. I always introduce Art as the Dennis Jones of facilities and capital projects as we think through these issues. Art has been an invaluable resource for us, for the committee, and for us as a staff as we've had to think through these problems. I've asked Art to just give us his thoughts on where the national conversation is around linking capital to state goals, and just to reflect on the work that he observed and contributed to over the last 6 months. Mr. Litsky.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, you want us to hold our questions till it finishes this?
I think it's whatever you want to do. I think ask questions whenever you'd like to.
This is more of a statement than a question. I just wanted to be of record here. As you know, one of the observations that were made quite often in terms of whether we should go to individual boards or not is that disparities would develop in terms of the capacity to come up with matches, or not matches, but your local outlay. and I want this for the record, is this intended in part to address those concerns? Those who said the rich will get richer and the poor will stay poor or get poorer under this system. Is this a way to address that concern?
I think we're trying to address exactly that concern. Trying to address other things relative to having, I think, a cogent agenda around capital, but we absolutely are trying to have an equalized process where a community college feels as if when their project enters the pipeline, it's being considered using the exact same criteria as a high research activity building.
And I hope whether we have a written policy or an adopted policy on this or not, I know you would do this personally, that we from time to time keep an eye out and re-examine and examine as we go forward, just to see if we see anything that looks like a disparity. Just that ought to be built in our written into our policy somewhere. We're plowing new ground here. We don't know what will happen, but I think as long as it's clear that from this body, we're going to be open, we're going to scrutinize carefully to see that there are disparities, and if there are disparities, come back to us and then go to the legislature and say, look, here's what happened, we didn't know it. Again, I'm not calling for an action item, but as we all know, that's been a big concern, and I just want us to be wary of those possibilities.
It's an important statement, and one that many of, I'm sure, the higher ed system and campus staff, and certainly our staff, at every single legislative hearing, budget hearing this year, I made the lap that the process you all will consider today is only as good as the presidents of the campuses and systems treat it. And if we get extracurricular lobbying going on from either the systems or the campuses, or if legislative actions happen, then this process faces a significant challenge. I want to thank the General Assembly who, on 3 separate occasions, either the chairman of the committee or another member went out of their way to say, world, please hear us. The THEC process of this board is the only process. So I feel confident that we have actually managed to mitigate a lot of those risks. And now what you have before you is the quantitative way to get there.
Thank you.
I brought 625 slides, and I was told I shouldn't use any of them. So I really have enjoyed watching this process unfold and participating in it. It has been truly transparent. It's been very collaborative. I hope you realize what a unique, or I shouldn't say unique, what a singular agency you have in terms of the openness and the way in which you work with the other institutions that you're responsible for. Not a lot of other programs like yourself do it in the same way and as collaboratively as I've watched it happen here. I know that we've explored together a variety of other state systems to see what they're doing. Some of them are very data-driven, some of them are less so. And I think we were trying to find a way that was simpler and more easily understandable. I know that there have been conversations with each of those states in terms of understanding what they were doing. There were conversations with separate universities to understand how they were going through the process. And what emerged, I think, has been a collaborative description of a process that is fairly simple and fairly transparent, and I think will work very comfortably once it's understood and tries and it's working out. I think the important thing is it's tied back to the state goal. Drive to 55 is going to be an important part of that discussion. It's tied back to the master plans that each institution has. It's tied back to your own state standards. So there's a tie back to the foundations of this agency and of these universities. So I think it is an experiment. It is a brand new experiment because most of the states that have systems in place have been in place for 20 years, 25 years or longer. So in a way, this is brand new. It's brand new to the new universities that are now coming out in force. And so it's going to change more than likely. But I think as a beginning point of reference and as an open process, it has been a very understandable and comfortable process. I think that I think we've all gone through, and I think the universities are in a position now where they can respond in an appropriate way to these different rubrics as we move forward. So whatever else you would like me to talk about, I can do it, but I don't want to delay the discussion.
I may have some questions later on about this, but let's go on.
Yes, sir.
I've got some whole questions about this whole thing.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Thank you, Art. Let me move us forward to other aspects of the capital policy itself. Capital maintenance, the end product of the policy change will not result in anything new. We will still put forth before you every November a list of capital maintenance projects. The policy, though, will change to a different methodology by which we develop those lists. Again, that is part of the conversations we're having with the LGIs and the systems. That will change using more of a data-driven exercise to figure out what are the true maintenance needs on a campus and at a system level. Finally, the disclosed project policy, and for those of you who are new, disclosed projects are those without using state funds when a campus brings other revenues, whether it's student fees, private fundraising, housing revenues, and performs projects that are non-academic in nature that are funded from other state sources. Those are disclosed to state governments and then go through a process through the State Building Commission and others to get approval and initiation. We are proposing there be some changes that more align our policies with the State Building Commission and then give campuses a little more flexibility throughout a year to identify special needs as they arise and to bring those forward. Moving on to another policy, but I will pause if we want to linger on this one for particular questions about this one policy. Let me keep going.
Dr. Denton, one question I
Yes,
do
sir.
have, just wanting to understand the rubric in terms of the differentiation and the weighting between the sectors, particularly with regard to the Drive to 55 and the campus master plan. This is probably more education for me. I probably don't have the history here, but just want to understand the weighting differences between those sectors.
Sure. It's a good opportunity to turn your attention. There's some supplemental information that is before you that Mr. Stafford's referring to. Basically, the manifestation of the policy. As we would think through how we would begin to communicate this with systems and campuses later on this year to present projects to us. This is the policy in action. It includes, at this point, what is a draft rubric of the points, which you refer to in your question, as well as more explanation of how the external funding would work, et cetera. That material is before you now. And Mr. Stafford, this is really our initial thinking about how it might look. Part of it is the primacy of the Drive to 55 rubric element, always having that be the heaviest weight across each of the different pathways a project can be pursued. Let me point out, too, that on that sheet, and it's page 3 of your materials, projects are taking different paths, whether it's a new construction or a major renovation at a TCAT or a university. There are different rubrics that we think the weights are trying to reflect back what the priority should be for a project of that type. A lot of philosophy is embedded in this, but it's really just our attempt to try to get some sense of how the priority order ought to be and what ought to get the heaviest weight as we think through a certain type of project. We'll be finalizing this after we receive feedback today on the policy before we send it out to the campuses themselves. Moving on to Facility Master Plans Policy 5. This is, of course, connected back to the capital policy as well. These are somewhat moderate changes. They're largely procedural. The major change is this. Currently, we ask a campus every 5 years to do a master plan. Sometimes that bleeds into 6, 7, or 8 years. We're now asking for a more periodic touchstone with each campus every 2 years to ask a series of questions that would discern whether or not a campus master plan ought to be updated. Has something significant changed with enrollments, or its programmatic mix, or its need for off-campus locations, its footprint? Has something significant changed that would cause us to ask them to re-engage their planners and architects to think through campus master plan updates? At a minimum, every 10 years, we want them to go through a full master plan, but this will now have us engage with them every 2 years to detect when a change is needed, because it is a crucial component of the capital outlay prioritization process. 4 more. Bear with us here. Lease space funding. This is, again, fairly minimal. It is aligning our policies with the State Architect's Office, cleaning up language to make sure we are doing everything we need to do for both the State Building Commission and the Office of State Architect. These are fairly minor and clerical changes. We're proposing to rescind a policy, which frankly I'm not sure we knew existed, which is the Chief Executive Officer of Housing for THEC. Sorry, Mike.
The mansion he has over there, he has to give up the mansion.
Yeah. Very true. So we are recommending that this one be rescinded in its entirety. It's not reflective of either our statutory or administrative authority.
Got to move out.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such house.
No.
Everyone's here.
The penultimate one is the funding formula. This simply reflects Complete College Tennessee Act and gets a little bit into the elements of the formula that are directed in statute. Just simply ensures that our procedures align with policy and with dictates by statute for the funding formula. Finally, self-supporting academic entities. For the veterans in the room, this is referring really to the ETSU College of Pharmacy. That's when this was developed, and discusses when there is a need to have an entity which is not receiving state support but relies on external and tuition revenues, the process by which that would get approved and the conditions for approval and the reporting requirements. That is the only one of its kind. We don't envision any new ones, but we wanted to get this one updated to reflect current policy and practice. Those are the 9 policies. I'll be happy to take questions about any one in particular.
Councilor Wilson.
First of all, I think this is absolutely splendid. We're addressing this. The system was broken, and I think this goes a long way to correct it. I also think that this deals with the match a whole lot better than what it was. In some cases, we had the match was simply going to the state school bond authority, borrowing the money with no real plan to pay it back, and in fact cross-collateralizing it against the wrong institutions. That's what you're talking about. Just completely ridiculous. I have some concerns about these, and these are fairly minor, but I think they should be thought about. We have a minimum amount of basically funding the institution needs to come up with. And generally speaking, I think it's very appropriate to have the 3 categories and have minimum amounts. Although but I think they probably should be minimum amounts and not determinative in the rubric. For example, I think that probably when you analyze this at the University of Tennessee, you might want to have a greater match for an athletic facility than you would for one of the areas that are difficult to not that popular. And what really concerns me is the TCATs, and this goes very closely to what you're saying, Mayor. There some cases, I think that that TCAT should be really 100% funded by industry. I mean, and I think it's appropriate for it. And there are other cases that, do we really want TCATs to be out raising money? I have some real question about that. That's really outside their traditional function. So I'm a little concerned about having minimum requirements, particularly for TCAT. And I think that in some of these, where they rank on the priority list really should be determined by how much you're going to raise yourself. I think that is inherently subjective, and it creates all the problems that you get with subjectivity. I understand that, but I still think it's appropriate. So they're my thoughts about this. I really kind of object to the 2% for TCAT. I really do, because I can see many circumstances where you really don't want them to be involved in fundraising. It's outside their mission. That's not outside for welder to it's just not what you do. But that's my thoughts about this. But let me say, this is so much better than what we had. It really is.
Councilor Wilson, did you want to address those?
A few thoughts on that. And part of the motivation of the staff recommendation on this was to maintain some level of skin in the game, external funding for every project type, even TCATs. Secondly, for major renovations, there is no minimum for any institution. And this is an issue I know Dr. DiPietro, you mentioned before, Chancellor as well. So for major renovations, no one has any minimum. And finally, too, I guess it's, we tend to think of this in terms of private fundraising. This can also be their own reserves, grants they receive. There are multiple avenues to get to that minimum. It's a point well taken, and this has been some feedback we've gotten that it is really hard for TCAS and community colleges as well to hit that fundraising level, but maintaining some minimum we felt was important for the program.
The other thing I would add, Mr. Comptroller, is the project type has an influence on the ability to match too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
That's-
very few people want a steam plant named after them, but you need it.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's it.
Is it fair to say, just to clarify for parliamentary purposes, the commission is not being asked to vote on the rubric per se. They're being asked to vote on the overarching policy. And I think we feel very comfortable committing, as Chancellor Tidings and I have exchanged glances on that TCAT fundraising thing. I think we feel very comfortable committing to monitor it. You are not voting to adopt that rubric per se. And if we get a sense on the TCAT projects that is becoming a very significant barrier, that we could bring that back to the commission.
Absolutely. That's a good point to distinguish. Also, too, regardless of what is both passed today and implemented this fall, much like everything else we do, we would take a vigorous look at this after the first cycle and see where we need to tweak and make changes as well. This will be a continuous review we do. This is not being locked in for a certain time period. We'll look at this after every year for improvements.
One of the key things as you look at this, take places like Memphis, where we go head to head every day with Mid-South Community College across the bridge in Arkansas, which has just really cleaned our clock on some TCAT type programs. So look not merely with what we're doing in the state, but the market in which we are competing. And with respect to Comptroller's observation about the local match, whatever you want to call it, I've forgotten what it is. Again, this sector in our society is in so much need. That's going to be the bedrock of our state. If we attend to this population, we're going to save money on our indigent health care, our correctional facilities, all of those things. Because that's a sector of society that if they're not productive at some level, and I think that there just ought to be absolutely no impediment whatsoever. But you've satisfied me by saying you're going to monitor that. And if you see that we're not competitive with Arkansas or Northern Mississippi in these courses, then we need to adjust our policies.
Point, Mayor Warden. Other comments or questions?
Go ahead, Commissioner Stafford.
Finish that thought there.
So it just popped into my head. Within the annual process of the Finance Department, taking a look at what they're going to allocate to capital outlay, does this body review your recommendation, Mike, to finance about capital outlay? I don't recall.
Well, I mean,
it doesn't work that way.
I mean, obviously, our November meeting, we identify specific projects that head to the finance department, but we really don't have that conversation with the budget office per se.
The one thing we do is that first look meeting, Dr. DiPietro, where we at least describe the types of projects being contemplated so they get an early look at what's coming down the pike, but it is not a continual feedback mechanism.
And one more time I will get on my soapbox, and then I won't promise. I'll probably be on it again. But the reality is, because of the approach to not knowing exactly how many dollars each year you're going to commit to capital outlay for higher ed, we can't get into a build-in parallel approach. If we knew every year the allocation, you've heard me say this to you, Mike, privately, was going to be X, then you could start to do projects in parallel as opposed to series. I know there are concerns about that should the state fall on hard times. This past year, we got really creative about that engineering services building. We didn't need to because the budget was very strong and the governor was very helpful. But the reality was, you remember we said fund half of it this year, and if you fall short, we'll figure out. We'll have the plant funds put aside to deal with it, or gift money to finish the building. It'll be on Knoxville's back, nobody else's. But I think it's time for state government to look at that possibility, because I think we're short. We've got a lot of expectations from the standpoint of needs among the LGIs, TBR and the UT system. And now that we have LGIs with their own boards, I think there will be some expectation that those institutions receive significant funding fairly often for their capital needs. So if you're in a cycle where you have to have every penny in the bank before you start, the time frame between project initiation is forever. But I can't get much lift on that.
Comments or questions?
So just changing subjects, and mine is more a comment than a question. Last night I came in early because I had early morning meetings this morning, and while I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express, I did gain some intelligence because the only time I get to read the USA Today is when I stay at a hotel. But the front page of yesterday's US Today had an interesting article about mental illness on college campuses, and it was a pretty striking article, and I don't know its applicability to what we experience in the state of Tennessee, but when I look at the outcomes-based funding formula and I think about the student retention and student success, I wonder whether our colleges and universities are doing as much as they can to stem any impact of mental illness on our campuses and create better opportunities for success. So I'm not necessarily making a request, just maybe putting on the record that we should be doing all we can to ensure that our colleges and universities are not succumbing to the problems of mental illness.
Yeah, well said. We agree. Our hope is the formula provides the impetus for schools to turn over every leaf they can, to succeed with every student they can, overcome every barrier they can, those included, to give them that incentive and to do so to their advantage.
All right. Okay, at this point in time, we'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
A motion for approval, Dr. Dishner. Is there a second? Second from Commissioner Stafford. Any discussion, further discussion on this? There's been plenty of discussion, but further discussion.
So we're not voting on the rubric itself, we're voting in the general.
Yes, sir, correct.
Sure.
Any further discussion? Very well. All in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Dr. Deaton. All right, next, item 3B, we'll address open records. And Brett Gibson.
Thank you, Chairman Cope. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Last year, the General Assembly passed Public Chapter 722, which updated the Tennessee Public Records Act in several ways. The update requires all governmental entities subject to the Act to adopt a written public records policy by July 1 of this year. This written policy must include the process for requesting access to public records, including any forms that need to be submitted, the process the agency will follow when responding to these requests, including the redaction of any confidential information exempt from disclosure, a statement of fees that will be charged for copies and how those fees will be paid, and then finally the title and contact information of the Public Records Request Coordinator, who's the person designated by the agency to ensure that these requests are fulfilled in accordance with the law. Public Chapter 22 also directed the Office of Open Records Counsel, a division of Comptroller Wilson's agency, to publish best practice guidelines and a model public records policy for agencies to use when developing their own policies. Item 3B in your agenda is the proposed THEC public records policy, including request and response forms developed based on those models and best practices. We recommend approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? All right, the motion, what about a second? I have a second. All in favor signify so by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Next, item 3, we're on to item 4 now, tuition and fee ranges. Dr. Deaton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a rather historic agenda item, I suppose. Not only is it the last one of the day, just about, but it's also the first time this body will act on binding tuition recommendations. To give you a little bit of the background here, of course, the Focus Act dictates that we take action on tuition and fees for resident undergraduates, so this does not include out-of-state students, graduate tuition, things of that nature. This is just resident undergraduates. And it is concerning two numbers. First is just the maintenance fee, or the in-state tuition, as it's more commonly called. The one range will apply to that. Second would be to the combined tuition and total mandatory fees. So the whole combined package, there's a range applicable to that. Not the specific fees therein, but the whole package. What's being passed around is a revised version of the agenda item in the notebook. There was a small error in the starting number for one of our campuses. We have since corrected that 2016-17 tuition fee number. The range we're about to recommend still applies, and you see the revised numbers. All that is in red, if I remember correctly, on what's been handed out. So to back up, in November, this commission adopted a state funding recommendation of $48 million, concurrent with a 0 to 4% guidance range at that time. The legislature has now passed a budget, which included not $48 million for the formula units for operating increases from state funding, but $55 million, so about $7 million more. That $7 million is not trivial, but it is also within the context of a $3 billion budget base. So therefore, the recommendation before you is to maintain those ranges at 0 to 4%, again, for both the tuition, the maintenance fees, and for the grand total tuition and mandatory fee package combined. If that were to occur, and that's what's on the slide now, Dr. DiPietro referenced this, this would be the lowest 3-year consecutive tuition increase. He references Greece. I think of it as the year that Reggie Jackson hit 3 home runs in Game 4 of the 1977 World Series, so be that as it may. The lowest 3 years on record. That is a monumental achievement, and it's the applause goes to the systems and the schools for keeping those costs down. This would be, again, the lowest 3 years on record. There is a chart on the screen and in your materials that would show what those no tuition levels could be, again, for a full-time resident undergraduate, and what her combined tuition and mandatory fees would be in total. Again, not any specific fees, but just that total across universities, community colleges, and TCATs. Mr. Chairman, that is the recommendation, and staff are happy to answer questions.
Questions?
Approval?
Second.
Approval in a second. All right, everyone in favor? Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would just note for the record, in November, we brought you a 0 to 4 planning range. That's now being essentially adopted now. And I think we want to be clear, though, to all the externals, that may not always be the case. It was the case this year because the funding range in November that we brought you was generally adopted by the General Assembly. If there's a year where the budget is substantially different, I think staff will feel very comfortable in bringing a tighter range to you at the commission. So I just, for planning purposes for the campuses, we don't want, since it's the first time we ever do this, there would be a belief that what is recommended in November will necessarily emerge in May.
It's a great point.
I may have missed this, Mike. Do we anticipate anybody adopting 0?
No, sir.
Okay. So we can say we've got a 0 to 4% range. We don't really have a 0 to 4% range.
That's a good point, Mayor. That is an excellent point by Mayor Wharton. So, okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Dr. Deaton. Yes, sir.
The record, I think that I may well in future years believe in 0. And I think it may be justified.
Very good. All right, we're on now to item number 5, institutional mission profiles. Betty Dandridge Johnson.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'd like to reference agenda item 5 regarding the institutional mission profiles. These profiles are critical to THEC's statutory responsibilities for both funding recommendations as well as reviewing new academic program proposals. The Complete College Tennessee Act of 2010 initially required colleges and universities to develop institutional mission profiles that will characterize their distinctive program offerings, address the types of students served, and where appropriate, also address research and public service functions. The Commission approved those profiles in November 2010. The 2016 Focus Act also emphasized the importance of these profiles and directed the annual submission of profiles by each university and community college. Included in your agenda materials are profiles for the 9 universities, the 13 community colleges, and UT Health Science Center. For the very first time, the UT Health Science Center also developed a profile. Since the Health Science Center is now a separate institution from UT Knoxville and was awarded SAC-COC accreditation in 2015. Another major change that occurred with the profiles are reflected in the institution's basic Carnegie classification. We've already had some discussion regarding the Carnegie classification. But for over 40 years, this system has been the major national framework for describing how institutions are alike as well as different. These Carnegie classification changes are reflected in profiles for some of the universities. The community colleges profiles were also updated, but theirs primarily reflected student demographic characteristics. Each year, the campuses will be reviewing and updating their institutional mission profiles per the Focus Act, along with student data that will be provided by THEC. And the 2017 institutional mission profiles are submitted for your approval today. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions of Betty? Yes, sir. Commissioner Watson.
I don't want to be unkind, but these are nice profiles, but I don't see a lot of mission statements in here. What I understand from a business statement, where's the mission? I may be overlooking an institution, but generally speaking, I don't see any what I would call from a businessman's standpoint a single mission statement. Don't want to be unkind. Nice profiles. But it doesn't say our mission is to blah, 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 blah.
That's a very good question. These are the institutional mission profiles. Each institution also has a mission statement, and those mission statements do indicate who and what they are. And those mission statements are for purposes of institutional accreditation, so we have to be very careful with distinguishing between the institutional mission statement and the institutional mission profiles. And per the Focus Act language, they indicated what those consisted of in terms of the language, in terms of looking at program offerings, looking at the students that they served.
Good. Other questions, comments?
Move approval.
Motion for approval, Mayor Wharton. Is there a second? Second. I have a second from Commissioner Stafford or Roach? Who had the second? Okay, Commissioner Stafford with the second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify so by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're at the end of our agenda. Any other comments in general anyone would like to make? Anything you want to talk about before we adjourn? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All right.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Good job. Yeah, that's good stuff. I thought we were going to go long a little bit, but it didn't.